welcome to Project Multi-Words, a video archive about my lived experience with mental illness and the struggles that come with it. This is the video story time of my 12th self-inflicted life-ending attempt. You can probably guess what that means, but I can't say it on YouTube. And this is the story of what I did and how a search dog found me just in time. So obviously there is a huge trigger warning for this video. I won't mention what medications I took in my overdose, but this video contains a lot of the dark reality of living with depression and the very, very destructive thoughts that for me come with it. So there's a content warning for the open discussion of those thoughts and mentions of what truly happened that night and before and after. So basically, if you don't want to hear the story of a self-inflicted life-ending attempt, don't watch this video. Stay safe, listen to your gut, don't put yourself in a situation that you're not sure if you can handle it. If you feel like you might be triggered, don't watch this video. Keep yourself safe, take care of yourself, you are loved. Now on with the video. If the Trees Could Talk is a poem written by me about this event, so I'm going to be reading it now. If the trees could talk, they would tell the story. The story about a person who wandered into the forest, hoping, desperately praying that it would be their last act. If the trees could talk, they'd tell of how the person sat and with shaky hands opened one pill packet after another, swallowing them 10 at a time, 1 to 356. If the trees could talk, they would tell of how they heard a shaky voice talking on the phone, saying sternly, "I will die. This is for the best. Tell my parents that I love them." If the trees could talk, they would tell of how the person stood and shut off their phone, wandering deeper into the forest, desperately hiding not to be found, knowing that the police wouldn't find them in time. If the trees could talk, they'd tell of how the kingdom of heaven opened up and shone a light on the person standing up and falling down, too weak to climb the stairs to heaven, unaware that it wasn't their time. If the trees could talk, they would tell the story of a brave search dog and handler venturing into the dark forest in a race against time, finding the person before it was too late. If the trees only knew that I survived. If the trees only knew that I recovered and thrived, and wrote this poem about my darkest night, I think they'd speak with pride. It was the 27th of October in 2024. I woke up in hospital. I didn't know where I was or why, and most importantly, I had no clue as to how I'd ended up in hospital. All I knew was that there was a fly behind me, buzzing in one ear and then in the other. It took me a while before I realized that I was experiencing hallucinations and stopped twisting and turning erratically in the hospital bed. I had survived something I never thought I would. Something which, frankly, I didn't want to survive. My life didn't end with attempt number 12. But this story began way before I woke up in the hospital. It began even way before I downed the pills in the dark forest where I expected my body to lay until someone found me, guided by the stench of decomposition. It actually started with the bullying in my childhood. It started the moment I started dreaming of an escape from the hell that was my school and life and everything I couldn't deal with. It would have been supposed to end before this attempt. That is why this is attempt number 12. There were 12 ends before this, but they were only the end of a chapter, not the book. This one wasn't the end either, obviously, but I got close. I was horribly depressed. I was in a psych ward because I'd attempted to take my life like a month prior, and I hadn't gotten better at all. I was actually horribly depressed. I don't mean just like feeling down or tired. I mean like a soul-crushing mental pain. an exhaustion that makes you sob in the fetal position on the floor for hours at a time. Regardless of the amount of sedatives I got, that was my daily routine. I'd start crying somewhere at around 11 and continue until I was knocked to sleep with a bunch of sleeping pills. As I lay on the floor sobbing uncontrollably, I wished for any relief. A small, brief respite 3 times was intramuscular haloperidol, which at some point on the internet was dubbed as beauty juice. I didn't get it forcefully. I begged for it, as it helped. It was magic. I got it injected into my butt cheek, and then the tears would just dry down. I mean, I wasn't happy. It wasn't like some sort of euphoric high. It didn't cure my depression, but it took the worst edge off of it. For 24 hours, and then I was back to sobbing on the floor in the fetal position. The pain was so hard that there are no words for it. It's not something I can describe. It's not something that anyone can imagine before experiencing it. And it just would not go away, no matter how many medications I was put on, not even with high doses of diazepam like 5 times a day, or huge shots of the sedative distranelrin, or anything that wasn't literally injected into my butt cheek with a hidden needle. The pain was so terrible that if I would have been told that the very next day I'd feel better, I still wouldn't have been able to keep myself alive until then if I had a method. It was just completely impossible to endure. That is what led me to plan. I mean, I quite literally had a lot of hope in the future. I was on the waiting list for intravenous ketamine therapy, and I knew that it would help, because in the summer of 2024, just a few months prior, I had received Spravato, the antidepressant nasal spray containing esketamine, and it was a wonder drug. It, for a short time, completely took away my treatment-resistant depression. It was the first thing that worked, and it really helped. So all the odds were in my favor on the matter of intravenous ketamine therapy helping me. And like in hindsight, I ended up receiving the intravenous ketamine therapy. And then like half a year of Spravato, and now I'm in the middle of my second thing of intravenous ketamine. But anyways, it helps for a while. It doesn't completely cure you, but during the duration of the treatment, you can actually enjoy life, and it's magical. It really is. So in hindsight, I should have waited. But there was no set date. I didn't know if I'd have to live for a week or two or a month or two. And in a situation where I could barely hold out for a day, it did not feel like I'd be able to wait. So I planned. I Googled, Google has a lot of answers, especially to do with the lethality of pharmaceutical drugs. So that was what I researched. But while I never gave any thought to researching, like, search dogs and what they do if someone's hiding in a forest, I had previously tried to hide during attempts, but well, once I was found by the police before I even got to a forest to hide in. Kind of ridiculously, the police, with their police car, found me at the car park at the end of the road, from which only a pedestrian path continued on, and chased me down and put me in the back of the police van and called an ambulance, and then I ended up spending like 3 days in like the ICU. But anyways, this time, I was not making the same mistake. I knew a good forest, and I'd hide there before the police car drove down to me and police ran after me. Simple as that. There are no roads in forests, and the police have cars, right? So obviously, I would not be found and I'd have enough time to cease living. Foolproof plan, right? So it was the 26th of October when I went forward with my great and totally absolutely foolproof plan. I had been on leave from the psych ward and had gone to my assisted living facility to visit. I cried the whole time there. I sobbed in the fetal position on my own bed, and although it was a very comfortable bed, I did not feel good at all. I said I'd go back to the psych ward. I packed my bags. I took stuff with me. Well, obviously not clothes, but stuff like a winter jacket and cigarettes. All I'd needed in forest before my life drained away. Now was the time for the tricky part of my plan. Since this was not my first overdose, I had a time limit on my prescriptions, meaning that I could only get 1 or 2 packets at certain intervals. But, well, I'd already spent almost a month in the psych ward, so the waiting time shouldn't be a problem. But also, I was in hospital, and I did not know if they'd canceled my prescriptions or something. I didn't know, so this whole plan could have easily been toppled by one pharmacist saying, "Sorry, you don't have a prescription for this." But, well, I swallowed my fear and doubt and went to a pharmacy and took a waiting number. I was seen almost immediately. There weren't so many people there that Saturday late in the afternoon. I go there with my freshly dry eyes and say, "Hi, could I get bleep and bleep?" And I asked that with a fake smile. And I hoped that it wasn't obvious that I'd been sobbing for hours, only stopping on the bus on my way there. No, I wasn't crying. I felt a sense of peace. It's tremendously easier to keep back tears when there's an end date for your suffering. The pharmacy, though, only had one of the medication in stock, so I got the packet handed to me by a pharmacist who was mirroring my smile with eyes that had not cried, unlike mine. Then I went to a second pharmacy by metro and repeated the same procedure, this time only asking for the drug that I hadn't received. I received the packages of medication and shoved them into my bags and left after paying. The hard part was done. I managed to obtain what was needed for my method, so now it was time to hide. I had a forest in mind. Quite ironically, it was a stone's throw away from the hospital where I was supposed to be returning to. After a short while, I was at the forest, having ventured off into the brush to a temporary hiding spot. It was quite close to the road, but it was a place where I went in a sense of urgency and planned to venture deeper before losing consciousness. I took the pills, 10 or 7 at a time, washing them down with big water gulps. I was feeling at peace. I wasn't even having to put in any effort to keep the tears down. It was not a struggle mentally. I was sure, determined to end my life. I really can't describe the feeling when your heart is beating with force but you're ignoring it, ignoring every warning sign, launching yourself out of safety, intent on silencing your coarse heartbeat. It's difficult to describe the mixed feelings, a mind willing to die and a body fearing it at the same time. But my mind is stronger than my body. It was only a matter of time before my speedy heartbeat started affecting my mind, though. I guess they are interlinked. Oh no, I did not change my mind, though. But I was so sure about my death that I started thinking of my parents' reaction. I knew they'd think that it was a bad thing, when I was absolutely hell-bent that it was the exact opposite. The best action of my life. This was the best action of my life. This was the best ending. But how could I tell them after my death? They wouldn't believe me anyways, but maybe if a medical professional told them? That is the thought that spurred my one mistake. The one that indeed ended up saving my life. I picked up my phone and called the psych ward, tapping the number in. A nurse answered almost immediately, and I just calmly stated the situation. I've overdosed. I'm in a forest, but I'm not going to tell you which one, and there are a lot of forests in Finland, so you won't find me. Don't send the police. Please tell my parents that this is the best possible ending to this grim story. Please tell my parents I love them. Bye. And then I hung up while the nurse was saying something I didn't care about anymore. I also posted a cryptic story on Instagram for all the people that wouldn't otherwise be aware of my passing. Then I shut off my phone. If it remained open, it could be tracked. Careful not to litter. I don't know why I cared. I took pill packets, now completely empty, and shoved them in my bag. I then ventured deeper into the forest until I found a nice secluded spot where I sat on the ground. At first, I was even bored. I couldn't open my phone to doom scroll. I couldn't care after a while, though, as I lay on the forest floor. After that, I only recall brief moments. I was laying in my hiding spot when I started to see light. It looked like the headlights of a car. Oh shit, it's an ambulance in the middle of the forest. I started running away, chaotically stumbling. Through the trees, the headlights were following me. They were going through a dense forest, but I didn't think that was impossible. I don't know. I hid behind a tree and warily looked at the light. It wasn't there anymore. The whole forest was dark and silent. For all I knew, maybe the magical ghost ambulance teleported out of the forest. I don't remember what I thought. I don't remember what I did after that either, for an unspecified amount of time. And then at some point the light came back, but this time it was shining from above. It was the middle of the night, or sometime around there, I'm not sure. But there was a blinding white light above. I tried to stand up, I managed to stand up, but then immediately fell to the side. Not bothered, I stood up again, only to fall the opposite way to the ground. This repeated more and more times, but all I remember is seeing it. So, to be honest, I have no idea why I was so intent on standing on the muddy ground. And then I'm in hospital. I was confused. I have no memory of ending up there. My first memory there is the nurses inserting a urine catheter, which, to be honest, I would rather not remember. It's quite an uncomfortable experience laying there with both legs spread open and a couple of nurses staring at your exposed, crotch area, and while shoving a tube into your urethra. That wasn't the first time I have had the experience, but I would have rather not remembered that anyways. I was confused as to how I was laying in a bed. I was supposed to be in the forest. I was supposed to be a rotting body on which mushrooms grow. Then I examined my surroundings. A hospital bed with the sides up in a laying position. In front of my bed was a nurse's station with the weird computer thing that has wires going up to the ceiling where they do all of their note-taking. And then I examined myself. 2 cannulas, one in both arms, and an arterial cannula, which is a cannula that goes into your artery. And luckily I don't remember them placing that because it really hurts because they poke around your muscle with that huge needle. But anyways, I had one of those in the elbow crease of my right arm. I still have a scar there. And, of course, I had the urine catheter. And I was, of course, covered in those annoying stickers that measure something, and the weird clip measuring oxygen saturation. And, I noticed that I'm alive. I didn't know how I'd gotten there, so I conducted some reconnaissance by asking the nurses. They immediately dropped a bombshell on me. I had been found by a search dog. What? And they repeated, I was found by a search dog. And once they realized that I could not remember being found, they just casually said, oh, you must have been unconscious by then. Which was another bombshell because I do not remember being unconscious. I don't know what I thought, but I thought I'd remember if I had been unconscious. I know that this is the effect of one of the medications I took. I've later learned by taking that, like a lot more of it, and being completely out of my mind. So I guess the confusion is explained by that. I spent some amount of time there in the hospital bed until I was walked back to the same psych ward where I was supposed to have been at through the underground tunnels of the hospital. If you're from Finland, Espoo, you know Jorvi has underground tunnels. They're not really that exciting, but like it's a cool idea. The attempt was over. I survived. But I still learned more, because in Finland we have this app called Maisa, which lets you read your medical records. So of course I went and read everything. For one, I found that I was interviewed by a psychiatrist, of which I have no recollection of. And I'm not surprised that I don't remember, as the psychiatrist was unable to interview me as I was just making sounds and turning around in my hospital bed, not saying a single word, rendering the interview completely useless. The whole psychiatrist made the medical notes about that, and the whole thing is patient turning around in bed, patient making noises. So yeah, I don't know why they thought I benefit of a psych evaluation in that state, but yeah. I also found out that I had a nasogastric tube at some point, as it was described as being in the right place on the chest x-ray, both of which I cannot recall. It was also described that the police contacted a doctor who could see the fact that I had actually collected medication from a pharmacy, which launched off the search efforts. And the search dog was from VAPEPA, Vapaaehtoinen Pelastuspalvelu, which is the volunteer search and rescue organization in Finland. I didn't know they had search dogs, but apparently they do, and one found me. Very unexpected. I honestly had no idea something like that could happen. I had always imagined that search dogs are in mountain ranges finding people in blizzards, both of which we don't really have in Finland. I know about police dogs, those are for drugs, of which I had none, or cadavers, of which I was not one yet. I was found before that stage of my plan. But turns out VAPEPA has search dogs for missing people. And one of those sniffed out me in the forest, found me. I lived. Then at some point I received a message from my mom. A link to a news article, which my mother had accompanied with a message saying it's a serious matter, don't do that again. The news article was titled, Poliisi sai ilmoituksen hengenvaarasta, koira teki löydön haastavissa olosuhteissa, translating to something like, the police were alerted to a life in danger, a dog made the find in harsh conditions. I don't know what the harsh conditions were, as it was literally just a bit cold and a lot dark, but well. The article misgendered me as a woman. I'm non-binary. Okay, hello, little update. I went and reread the news article, and turns out I had forgotten what it had inside. So I'll put the original and translated versions somewhere here. It's translated because it's originally in Finnish, and I realized that most of the world does not speak Finnish. So I found some new information I didn't remember, and holy hell. Okay, the harsh conditions were darkness, rain, and it was foggy, so you couldn't really see anything. I guess that qualifies as harsh conditions. There had also been a police dog there in addition to the VAPEPA dog, even though it was the VAPEPA dog that found me. And the more shocking information, there had also been people from Helsingin Lentopelastusseura, which translates to the Helsinki Flight Rescue Organization. So there had been a UAS, unmanned aerial system, which I'm guessing is like a drone, that was equipped with a heat detection camera looking for me, which is like, yeah, search efforts. I did not remember that. I honestly don't remember a lot from the time, so I guess that's like a part of depression, just like completely wiping your memory, as that can happen with severe depression. So the search efforts were even greater than I thought, and I feel like I should include this update here, as this is some pretty crucial information. And I guess that just proves how hell-bent everyone was on keeping me alive. So, yeah, update over. But other than that, it was quite short, didn't have my name or anything, just described that I was found hypothermic and alive, and that the police thanked the volunteers that searched for me and found me. So, well, my attempt made the news. So, I guess, at least that's an unusual story to tell. A story which I'm telling here on this video. If only I could remember the situation of how I was found by a search dog, but sadly can't. The story would be a lot better if I knew the details, but no one knows them. Or I guess the dog does. I hope that this video was watchable, as it has now come to a close, and I hope that this maybe shone a light onto the experience, the mental and physical battle, and the effects of an attempt. If you could relate, I'm truly sorry, but I survived. So as much as this is a story of an attempt I was not meant to survive, I survived. This is a story of survival, to be honest. And honestly, I've lived for over a year past that point. And I've had some of the best memories in my entire life during that year. There is so much I would have missed out on, so honestly, I'm quite glad I didn't succeed. I mean, yeah, I've almost died after that too, but for the most part, it's been. So stay safe, everyone. You're loved and cared about. And this is my first video, but if similar videos are something you might want to watch, consider subscribing to me, as this certainly won't be my last video. Goodbye from Product Moldy Words.